But no, that's pretty good fit. That's a nice fit, actually. You get the proper amount of glue in there, and that looks really good, I think. So, mortise and tenon from the Pantorouter, which is no longer Panto. So, it's a 1-to-10, maybe 1-to-10 router. Okay. Enough of that. It's probably a little bit easier to demonstrate what I've done here if I start taking it apart. And I can talk about it from there. I've added these knobs here to this. I don't like these though because they're kind of slower than I would like. Even though this is a machine that you would set up basically for, in my opinion, for several cuts at the same time. And then you would change it to the other side to do the corresponding cut. And so a little thing like that really wouldn't matter, but I could speed it up by making a clamping mechanism that goes on here and holds that in tighter rather than having those bolts come through. So this comes off, and what this is the template that I made. And on the bottom here, this slot down here is what will cut the mortise. And this one up here cuts the tenon. The thing about this thing is, though, it can be adjusted. Right now I have it set for 1.5 inches. And so is this for the tenon. But I can move it out. I can widen it out without making any changes to the template itself. Just take these screws out, move these pieces over to widen it out. Like if I want to make one that's 1 inch wide, undo these screws, make a new hole there at 1 inch for this space in the middle, and I'm good to go, except for I have to make a new one of these. So what I wind up doing is making a new width of this part up here for each, new size that I want. But when thinking about it, I decided that the 1.5 inch size is probably the one that I'd use the most if I were to use this for, making cabinet doors or anything like that. So this is reversible. It's not reversible, but you tip it upside down. This way it goes in like this, and then that pin on the back of the router here, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more in a second, will fit in this slot right here. And those things here act as stops, so it limits how far it'll go. And then when you have that cut, you flip it over like this, and it goes on again. And then the pin rides around this pattern right here, which will cut the tenon in the end of the stock. All right, I take you in for a closer look at what I've got done here. As you can see, I didn't change this mechanism here. What I did do is I took these pins that were inside here. There were actually 2 on each end. I took one of them out and I moved it out here so that I could add this wooden piece here. Originally I was going to do this with metal, this part right here, and eventually maybe I will. This is kind of a mock-up. I just came out here the other evening, inspired type thing, and I started messing around with this, and this is basically what I came up with between that and the next morning. So it's not 100% permanent, I guess you could say, but it is pretty close to what I would have. Like I said, I'd replace these bolts with a clamping mechanism here to make that quicker, but basically this is it right here. So this wooden part is bolted on here. This lines up with the bit on the other end. The template holder on the back here, I removed the metal structure that was on here before. I also removed that handle that moves it back and forth. Looking at the handle, it was in the way of what I wanted to do here. And also the handle itself doesn't provide any, significant mechanical advantage to the operation there. So it's kind of redundant. All I'm doing when I'm moving this in and out is just putting my hand up on the top here and pushing it in and pulling it out. So may add a little handle here that might be a little bit more convenient, but right now I'm just, like I said, pushing on the back of it here and it works fine. So the top of this is exactly, and I very carefully measured this and lined it up, 1 inch down from the top of the table. And that's my indexing point. So if I need to have the cutter, say 3/16 inch above the table to make a 3/8 inch mortise in the 3/4 inch stock that I'm working with, then all I need to do is raise this pin up 1 3/16 inches, and that puts that cutter. And that's what these strips are right here. This is 1 3/16 inches. So it makes it easy to get the correct height. Also, you can see here I marked the center line. I finished marking the center line on the table, then extended that over, and that goes up through the pattern or the template as well. So that's my reference point for everything here. And, you know, it makes it easy to lay out everything so that you get the correct offsets. And that was one of the issues I had when I went to set this up the first time. There wasn't any center line. There wasn't any reliable way for setting the height. And I got to be honest with you, I'm not big on setup. I don't like complex things. When I come into the shop, I want to get started. I want to do something. And if I have to do a lot of setup, that's a big turnoff for me. Another thing is math. If I have to figure out a lot of different stuff, it's not that I'm incapable of doing that. It's that that's where you make your mistakes. And that's why I tend to avoid them. Because you can spend hours on end working something out and doing it. And then in the end, when you go to put it together, one very small mistake in your math or your calculations or a little, gap in your thinking will ruin everything you've done so far for the day. So that's why I like to keep things as simple as I possibly can. And that was the idea with this, to simplify it. Maybe I'm just too simple. Maybe I'm, not complex enough. But anyway, this has the versatility I want with this slot that's adjustable. And then all I need to do is make a new thing right here that fits in this upper slot. This upper slot is actually wider than this one down here. There is a little bit of, I can't say play, it'll overcut, like it'll cut the mortise a little bit bigger than the bit. Obviously, there's a little bit of chatter that can happen there. This is not as rigid as, say, a big cast iron machine that holds this in place so that it can't possibly move or, flex. But it does a reasonable job. All I had to do was make this just slightly bigger than 3/8 thick. I'd have to measure it, but it's like, I don't know, 10 or 15 thousandths thicker than 3/8 of an inch. And that's what gave me the tight fit. So like I said, I removed the metal frame that was here before. I have the parts over there. If I ever want to put it back, I can do that. I didn't turn any of it into heat sinks. To add this part on the back here, this is just a solid block of maple that's 1.5 inches thick, 2 inches wide. It's bolted down solidly to this plate that rides back and forth here. I have the same on the other side, except it's shorter to clear the mechanism on the other side. I've got full range of motion here. I think I actually have more range of motion than the original because these metal bars that go up on top or go up and over are not there anymore. Anyway, I've got a more than adequate amount of range is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, that's what I did with it. Am I happy with it? Yes. Do I think it was worth the time it took me to do this? Yes, because what it did, first of all, is it gave me clear reference points that I could have done on the other arrangement. Honestly, I could have. But I've never been a fan of the idea of having something bigger and adding in that complexity with the math when you can just do 1-to-1. And like I've shown here, it's fairly simple with this machine because it has those 2 pins in there that I just moved out and made that part to go on the end. Even if it didn't have that, it would be a fairly trivial thing to make something that comes off the end there to mount a pin in like I've done here. Now the pin, I thought about using the end of a drill bit, the shank of a drill bit, but I've got this round bar that I bought at the home center actually, and I just cut the end off of that. And this thing is exactly 3/8 of an inch, so it works fine for that. It's like I said, it's the same size as the bit.
Okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not the best husband, and I'm sorry if I wasn't the best father. But I'm good at this. And I want to share this with you. I want to teach you what I learned. I get to touch people's lives with what I do. And it keeps me going, and I love it.